I got feedback from Scott on the memo, just like a few changes that I can put in. I guess I can re-forward that from where it is. After
Make sure you add the Ramus to the.
Yeah, I can forward that around later. Other than that, I mean, I don't have a whole lot. I know Scott emailed me this week about maybe catching up with the CPA and the lawyers. It didn't sound like that happened this week. Next week, I don't think would really work for me just with finals and stuff. So I don't really know where that's at, but maybe if you
don't worry about it
in a couple
we'll
weeks.
deal with it next month.
Okay.
I don't think here's the problem, and Ramos like kind of really take a note of this. I think what we really want to do is we want to meet with all of those guys early in the semester. I think it'd be helpful. I mean, this is kind of like it would have been nice to get some input, and I think a problem that we're having, and Ben, it's actually not the accountant that's on staff; it is the auditor. And but engaging them early in our process, particularly for next semester, we'll be able to move this needle in the appropriate direction, and that's the direction we're going to need to go.
So Ramus, I would expect next semester for the team to have a lot more interaction with third party, right, Ben? I mean, maybe that's something that you were kind of missing on your side.
Yeah, but Ben, in spite of the fact, I mean, I learned by your interaction with Scott, and
for me personally, I feel like the biggest thing is really like nailing down a couple of things that you want to work on. So like you need to figure out where you want to build, what you want to build, and really come up with a firm plan, because if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to get funding. You're not going to be able to do any of the grant research. You're not going to be able to figure out how much your redevelopment costs are going to be. So all of those things, like the getting funding and working with other partners, they're all going to make you do that work before they're willing to step in. And I don't really see any of that happening unless AEDC comes up with like a real investment prospectus.
All right. Well, let me throw some things at you, and then Ramos, I want you to hear this, and then so let's you and I, Ben, I want your reaction to this, because frankly, Professor Zorro and I had a conversation about this, and so I think he and I are aligned, but we are aligned only philosophically, and we certainly want your input, and then we want to talk with Ramos about it. So I think we can make this next 15 minutes very productive. So here's what we kind of bullet pointed. We identified 4 areas as four areas that potentially can work together, but each area kind of has its own checkbox. So we can actually include it or not include it. So the first area is we think about investment fund management, okay? And to kind of speaking about what you were talking about, Ben, I think that terrifies Scott in particular. But I think without having an investment fund manager, in other words, identifying somebody that has investment fund expertise, I think we're shit out of luck. I have happened more than an acquaintance, and he manages. He's done this for his whole career. Very, very adept at finance. Really understands a lot of things. Certainly understands this space. I'm going to put him under non-disclosure with my company, my consulting company. We're going to go through it. I'm going to see, at least get some personal advice from him and see if he's interested in at least, working with the team. Because I think, number one, if I had had him on board, he would have been a great resource for you and your team. And certainly, Ramos, I think he'd be somebody that would be a great resource for you. I can't disclose who he is yet because I haven't had the discussion with him. I've had a preliminary discussion. He's interested, but he doesn't. He's interested because he's a friend of mine and he kind of knows the topic in general, but he doesn't know in specific. So does that make some sense to you, Ben?
Yeah, especially now that AEDC is not raising its own fund. Yeah.
Well, we might. I mean, I might figure out how to do this and include AEDC, as part of it, but let him manage the fund. That's right. Kind of.
And Remus, one thing I want to mention to you is, we have a bunch of students joining for the summertime, especially the one that are working on the Pendex product.
Yep.
Think about maybe having some of them joining as well.
Okay, no problem.
Because we may not have enough students, right, all interested in that because we're getting a lot of students from the outside because of the pandemic and what's going on in India. I might, but then again, they may join online, so that couldn't be an issue. But let's let them know about it. Share with them the videos. I'm going to record this video so you could share with them, and the previous one that we had done as well, so that they have a better feel for what do you think is to
Yeah.
manage.
I know there's one girl who's an undergrad. It's really hardworking. She might be interested. And also, I'm not sure if Tiana's got accepted to MFE, but
Not
I'm
yet,
pretty
she
sure.
hasn't, because this is a real finance project. It's not a data
Right.
driven. It's a really, and it's the only project that we have like that is pure
Like a
finance.
pure finance. Yeah, understand.
John.
So second thing, I'm trying to remember, Ben, did you ever get a chance to talk with David Dunn? He's the fellow that has investment bank experience and banking experience and SBA's.
I did briefly. I had a conversation with Scott and Aaron and David probably like a month and a half ago.
Yeah, so I think doing a warrants program for an incubator and post incubator is something, Ramos, that I'd like to explore doing as part of a grow your own, manufacturing program. And the nice thing about that is, and we're going to have to be a little, we have to be a little cautious about how but I know that we have to be careful about how we get that information. And the nice thing is that, and the reason I always had to be careful is the guy that runs that is doing, and let's use the manufacturing, and we would partner with them on taking the tech side of the manufacturing and leaving them with the tech side of tech. So there might be some opportunities, and that's kind of why, but I really think it would be great, for the Lehigh students to kind of bridge that gap between the two of us, particularly with a new director up there, right?
Yeah.
So then I don't have to, because my business partner knows me too well, so it's kind of like whereas the new guy doesn't know me at all, so that's fine, it'd be great. So that's the second thing, and like I said, David is already kind of thinking through some of those issues from an AEDC side. So I think that would be advantageous. Again, Ramos, for your student, for the students on your team to be able to have access to David, because he does know the SBA programs. He has been an investment bank. The guy has an amazing resume, and he really does understand a lot about finance, unlike Scott. But you got to remember, Scott is his boss. And I don't know if you guys know anything about the SBA programs. I think, Ben, you and I spoke about this briefly a while back. But the SBA uses the full faith and credit of the United States government in order to encourage banks to invest in the tier below loans that they would normally make, right? Or marginal loans. But the SBA never really engages in using the full faith and credit of the United States government. They let the banks do that, and they simply underpin or guarantee the loan if it goes bad. Well, I started thinking that we could do the same thing with the bonding of Allentown. So I'd like to actually engineer a bonding program with the city of Allentown's bonds. And I floated the idea to a couple of the city council members in Allentown, and everybody's up for re-election practically in Allentown, and they're all hot on manufacturing. Now, if that sticks, I think that the several of them would actually probably be interested in trying to contrive that. And then I found out that not only would they be interested in it, but apparently it's also been done before in the past. So I think it might be a fourth area of exploration for us, is how to use the bonding capacity to kind of contrive a program that may be in a reinstituted program, something like that. So I think that's a third tranche. Finally, we do know that the QOZ program from a tax credit standpoint is going to sunset, right? One of the reasons I wanted you to include it in the appendix is that, based on everything going on in my read of the political situation, it's very possible that we may be able to get this in front of Senator Booker and actually Senator Graham of South Carolina, who were the original ones that created it within the tax plan, because it is kind of consistent with what the new president wants to do, particularly from jobs and industrial jobs and the rehoming of a lot of supply chain issues. And so it might be interesting to be able to kind of rework the things that we like about that program that you've kind of located in that special section, and tweak that and basically say, here's how we'd like to see that done for the, in the QOZ areas. So it might be a fourth piece of a project. And I don't think you guys have caught up with it, but the vice president's husband was at this week, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, was at AEDC touring several of the incubator clients, and they were actually going across the street and looking at space that they need and that kind of thing, and what we are doing in some of these depressed areas to do industrial jobs and the recreation of that. So we may very well have an interesting period of time where we can make a point about doing some work in these QOZs, and CRA and that kind of thing. So these are the four areas that, Ben, I'd like you to comment on, and Ramos, I'd like you to think about as far as how do we constitute kind of this last phase of the project and really bring this home this next semester and say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're finalizing, bring it home, and we're going to move forward with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first thing I would say is the bond. I like the bond idea, especially with yields low. I don't really know what the appetite is for like muni bonds right now, just given the way things are coming out of the recession.
Well, we wouldn't be selling the municipal bonds, right? We would only be using the municipal bonds to encourage banks to loan the money because it's all CRA credits for them. Remember, these are all
Okay.
QOZ areas, right? And the QOZ areas and the Community Reinvestment Act. I'm sorry, Ramos, we've been speaking. So CRA, all of the areas in Allentown that are QOZs for federal purposes also happen to be Community Reinvestment Act areas, which are very, very favorable to the local banks. So using the bonding capability of the city of Allentown, where Allentown would basically help the banks and say, listen, we would kick in if your loans would go south, would be very attractive, I think, to all of the banks.
Yeah, that's a good idea. On the fourth item, I mean, I like being able to pitch the QOZ, especially with the manufacturing thing, because I think that'll be more popular than what a lot of people are seem to be doing with the QOZ, which is like building nice hotels on the fringe of a QOZ in a nice area. And I think that if they rewrite the legislation, they're gonna limit what you can actually do with the money. Like, they're not gonna keep letting these people put up hotels and stuff. So I think the manufacturing thing will be very appealing to the government folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're trying to do with it is exactly what, I think it's really what Booker and Graham originally intended, is to create really higher paying jobs. And it's kind of perfectly aligned with what the Biden administration is very interested in. And the kinds of jobs we're trying to bring here exactly meet the supply chain issues that we saw created, problems during the pandemic. So I think it kind of all starts aligning. We've got a lot to sell, and we're spade ready to go if we think about it.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll love the opportunity to scrape Trump's name and Ben Carson's name off of anything they can too.
I do like the idea that we need to identify which area we need to tackle first, instead of like last summer that we have a lot going on. We don't know where to start. So kind of just like tackle one problem at once. And I think it's also a good idea that we identify what is AEDC is lacking. For example, like you said, having to reach out to someone else, like the third-party resources about legal and also like a CFA. And then in terms of the bond and also like the investment plan, I think I have to talk to Ben a little bit more to kind of get the idea of like what is going on. But overall, I think for me, I'm definitely gonna look into more candidates for the next semester to get more people to get it rolling, because I know like the dedication, also the time spent on this was a little bit lacking, and also just kind of